Hey there team, welcome back to the channel, welcome to my overview of Outpost Infinity Siege. So for those on across it, I do overviews and reviews pretty much daily on the channel, and when I do one of these overviews, it's just looking at the first 2 hours of the game. Steam seems to think that you can make up your mind about whether you want to keep or refund a game in those 2 hours, and I generally agree. 20 hours in, you're usually not going to change your mind about what you thought 2 hours in. So it's a short punchy video, we keep it around 10 minutes, broad stroke details, give you an idea if this is something that you might be interested in yourself, and it also allows me to soft triage what I will and won't review going forward. Man, this is a groovy game. I missed it at launch. It's been a couple of months, I believe, but it's something that just keeps popping up on my feed and I just keep meaning to get around to it. So I bit the bullet this weekend and I picked it up. I wasn't really 100% sure what to expect other than Chinese sci-fi, which I find quite intriguing. There's a little bit of a culture shift, uniquely even different from Japan. It's almost like, often I find a lot of these sci-fi Chinese products coming out to be sort of AA Japanese, Asian culture type things, right? I know this is all quite generalizing, but it's distinctly not Western, but still quite janky and not as established as something like, you know, your Japanese big swingers. That's exactly what's going on here, and I really, really like it. So if you enjoy, like, at least the sci-fi aesthetic of something like Dyson Sphere, you would probably like this, albeit very, very different genre. What is this genre? It's actually kind of a mashup of a million different things. So far, it seemed to be working well. However, given that it's got sort of base building, wave defense, kind of Tarkov extraction shooter stuff, but that's kind of light in a way and more roguelike run-based, but still being unpinned by a narrative. There's a lot of catchwords I'm throwing in here, but it's not overwhelming. Like how it has been implemented synergizes really well. But again, some games you can figure out the entire loop and they show their hand in the first 15 minutes. And while this makes one of the best opening 15 minutes of games I've played this year, it's very bombastic and epic and front loads a lot of gameplay, which I don't know what to call it, but you'd be familiar with the sort of intro where it kind of gives you all the end game stuff and then, you know, you die fighting a bloody big old sort of finale scenario and then flashback and then you're a recruit. That's sort of opening, right? It's very, very good at showcasing what's to come, but it's clearly under those mechanics. It is built for the long grind. So while I've got a grasp of the first 2 hours and I really, really like what's going on here, it is one of those things that's definitely much more engineered to be a slow burn. But it all looks to be working really well and it's really tickling a lot of what I enjoy in these spaces. I'll mention it because I'll forget it and I don't even know if this is an organic place to put it, but aspects of the way it starts and the world building and the earnest, crappy voice acting, and that's no offense of course, often poor voice acting goes hand in hand with earnest, honest attempts at writing and world building, and I can find it quite charming a lot of the time. I don't really want some actor that takes themselves seriously trying to get an Academy Award and the performance is more about them and their credentials, much like a lot of modern writing. Whereas in this case, it's more about, hey, yeah, it's janky, it's a bit messy, but it's in service of a really interesting world and world building. So it's done that. But the broad shtick, to me, it kind of feels like Starship Troopers done through a sort of Chinese sci-fi lens. That's a very strange comparison. I don't think I would ever say that before. You know, especially in that first opening 15 to 30 minutes where you're prologue mode, you're part of the big base holding down the defenses, and they've got all the dudes signed up and they're getting an inspirational speech, you know, we will fight, you know, on the beaches, you know, basically equivalency. Yeah, I was getting into it, you know, it's corny, it's schlocky, but it's done so straight, you can't help but love it. So the core conceit, as I understand it, is that there's like AI got developed and AI would turn out to be a bad idea. And you're sort of the last pockets of humanity in a sort of militarized, terror-bound, almost a Battlestar Galactica kind of feel. You're sort of fighting pitched battles, but you pick your moments, and broadly speaking, you're trying to, you know, guerrilla fight, albeit from the perspective of these sort of mobile outpost systems. But the idea is that you are definitely on the way to extinction as humanity, And it's very much a resistance movement against the all-powerful AI that just bombards you with units. There's also some cool, like, squid movement drone flying through the air stuff that reminds me of The Matrix, or was it the third movie? So there's definitely some inspiration in there. But like for something that on paper might sound a bit eye-rolly, like in practice, the whole AI super enemy holding off waves, it's so cool. And seeing all the, the machine guns fire away and CIWS and all that sort of stuff, it's really cool to see that sort of stuff in game, and it really gets you jazzed. You can also in fact, I don't think I've seen CIWS anywhere outside of my career, but it's kind of cool to see a point defense that sprays 1 billion bullets a minute. But there's also sort of, American-style battleship cannons that you can put on your outpost. So it's taking this, I suppose not the most practical weaponry, but it is all about Hollywood spectacle. And in a way, like the graphics, the environment, all the assets and all that, there's sort of if these companies want to call things quadruple A or triple A plus or whatever, well, maybe I would say aspects of this is double A plus. It's kind of very high production, high energy for something that's double A. So before I let it get away from me, the idea is the loop is kind of split, and it's split in multiple ways, and I'm still getting my head around it because it's not exactly explained super well, but that's not necessarily in a bad way. More that it doesn't baby you. It does tutorialize you and take you through the motions, but it's more that it's doing unusual stuff, so there's a little bit of a teething process to it. But broadly speaking, you have a base back home, and it's a little bit XCOM-y. You've got different sections, and once you've learnt your way around it, you can fast travel from place to place. The big sort of star of the show is your outpost, which once you get through all the intro and stuff, you get given this experimental Outpost 11. And it sort of moves around overland. You don't really see it very often, but it's kind of can stand up like a spider and move from point to point. And essentially, you will build this thing out by installing weapons and all sorts of cool Gucci things on it. But it's all very small scale in the beginning. And you deploy it on sort of like on a run. Let's think of it like a roguelike run. And at the moment in the early days, there'll be like 3 locations, but there'll be branching paths, right? So you slay the spires, all that sort of stuff, pick your path, go in, and it puts you in this little instance, and at the center of the instance is your setup outpost. And what you do from there is you basically just go out into the surrounds. It's quite small, but again, this could all scale up 30 hours in, who knows? But you go into these buildings and you just loot everything that's not nailed down, and you have a first-person operator inventory system, a la Diablo or Tarkov or something like that. Now, it's not about hardcore health systems or anything like that. The gunplay seems clean enough, but it's definitely not a hardcore looter shooter type thing. You go around and essentially you just grind out and scavenge up some things and maybe kill some stragglers. There's a little bit more to it already showing its head, like there'll be little hidden areas or locked doors that you need specific key cards for, and I've collected some, but they're the wrong ones. So it's not necessarily instance based. These instances do seem to be ultimately procedural, but you can collect all sorts of tools to unlock what is essentially the equivalent of like a high-end loot chest. When you're done picking up all that crap, you take it back to the center of your little base, you plop it all in the extractor thing, and then you pull the trigger. And from what I can understand, the game rolls the dice about whether you're going to actually have to fight off waves of enemies or not. In some cases, there'll be some dudes come in and attack, and others I've gotten off the hook. And then you extract from that part of the stage, and then you continue along from instance to instance until you sort of are done. And then you go to the big finale instance, the extract, pretty much back to the beginning. And that was a little confusing, but think of it, once you've completed the mission, you have one last instance, and this is just a staged wave defense. And what happens at this point is all the crap that you've picked up along the way, you get to nominate how much of it you're going to fully extract, permanently back to base. And this will massage the timer that you have to hold out against the bad guys for. So if you take everything that's not fucking nailed down, then you're going to have to defend for minutes and minutes, which is what I found myself doing. And, it's one of those things. It really does walk the line of how greedy are you, can you hold it down? That's pretty much the core of it. And when you go into the sort of overworld base building mode, you can place down little turrets and all that sort of stuff that are temporary. They're instance based. You use a nominal currency and you place them within the bounds of your sort of power network thing, but it's not actually permanent fixtures to your core base. So there is a bit of tower building, tower defense mechanic. And also while you're out through the course of the run, you can find little radio stations and bonuses that will give you, here's a free turret that you can use basically in the finale. So it's really cool, it's really clever, and it takes a lot of different mechanics, puts them together, and they seem to work really well. The next big test would be, does it have the legs to hold you? There is a fair chance that I would review this because I find it quite attractive. It seems pretty cool. It's only $35 Australian, so that's pretty cheap. I can see it having performance problems. I'm obviously running on like a 40 series monster, and I had a few sort of starters, a few issues here and there, so I could see if you're running even a mid-level PC, there may be disagreements. But anyway, look, I'm really quite impressed, and it's very unique, it's very earnest, it kind of ticks all the boxes, and I feel like if this exact same project came out of, you could probably say like a AAA Western studio, but even just a AAA Asian studio, let's say, because they have a closer kind of sentiment, then, maybe this would go gangbusters. However, I say that, Exoprimal comes to mind immediately, which I loved. It was one of my favorite games last year. No one gave a shit about that, and it came out of Capcom. Anyway, at a certain point, I'm digressing. If you're a sci-fi fan, absolutely check it out. If you like some sort of schlocky oorah Starship Troopers stuff, I'd check it out as well. But broadly speaking, I would actually just say, like, in the spirit of finding gems and games and next gen's a term that gets thrown around, but when I look at something like this, combining all these cool different things together and really shooting their shot and trying something really unusual, I feel very enthusiastic about that sort of stuff, as opposed to just another plain Jane rinse and repeat safe game. This is cool, and this is what a lot of gamers, at least like me, are probably looking for. Anyway team, might just leave it there for the time being. I'll catch you guys on the next one.